Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to the next edition of the DFS Down Under show for round 20 AFL Daily Fantasy Contest presented by Draftstars. Welcome back to another episode where we're breaking down Friday night AFL footy, which is going to be the Saints and the Blues. And as always, breaking down with his expert opinion for daily fantasy sport. Here is the Big Hef. How are you, mate?
I thought you were going to say, as always, broken down. Here's Big Hef, but which wouldn't have been so wrong. How you going, Smatho? Big week of sport. Big week of footy.
Big week of footy. It has taken a little bit of a backseat with the Olympics in Tokyo going on. Hasn't that been a sportsman's viewing wet dream this week? Just what they say, too much sport. There's barely enough. Mark's back with us. Thanks for joining the show there, mate. Mate, before we get stuck in a bit of DFS, what's caught your eye at the Olympics so far as you get through? We're up to Thursday as we're recording on Thursday. This will be old news by the time Friday rolls around. But what's caught your eye so far?
I'm enjoying the Boomers. I'm just liking that the time zone's good.
Oh,
the time zone's the MVP for me. So any time of the day, just flick it on and it's on. It's none of this overnight business. Superb. How about yourself, Smatho? What are you been doing? A bit of judo or something?
Yeah, I've signed up for the 7 Olympics Twitter, right? And literally every 5 minutes, they have a little video of showing something that's happened, right? And I've pretty much watched every judo clip because they go into golden point or golden score because they just literally cuddling each other for a good 10 minutes and nothing happens. And then a move happens and then it's it, bang, gold medal, that's yours. So... But as JB suggests that Titmus, yes, our girl, the Tassie girl, Titmus Fox today that was great. That was great watching today too. Watching Jess Fox come down. Obviously, that course was a bit rough, but golden moments throughout the Olympics. But as I said, the time zones are just perfect. You roll out of bed.
Yeah, it's disappointing no one on Twitter weighed in on this relay. Actually, I would have thought someone would have had an opinion on Twitter, but on the order of the relay today. But what do you think, Smatho? Titmus first?
Look, there are some good opinions about the relay order. I reckon if you flip it the other way around, where if you got Titmus coming last, you send your fast ones out first, and then obviously if you're a bit behind, you can come on home. But they still got a bronze medal and they still got a PB. So, but look, we digress. There is daily fantasy sport here on Draftstars to tie us over for the guys that just don't really like it about the Olympics. But
why talk about the Olympics when we've got St.Kilda versus Carlton at the Dome coming up, Smatho? Your team, the Blues.
My team.
Some big ins.
Some big ins and probably a coach that could probably be out by Monday morning.
Monday morning?
No mail on that. It's just a reverse curse that I'm trying to put on my coach, who's not a bad coach, but never know. Now, before we get stuck into the Friday night footy, we're always going to give a shout out to our Draftstars live final golden ticket winners for last week. Now, we're down to our final 11 tickets, so they'll be all gone by Sunday evening. We'll have our field, 155 tickets. We'll be done. But we've got to give a little shout out to these guys here who won tickets last week. 3,000, Brendo, 3,000. Do you like the yellow here, Hef? This is Aussie gold. Aussie gold, this. So James Ryan, T-Yan, Stronday them, Superwood, Leroy, 88, Crazy Pundit, Cookies, and Bricker Boys. They're all snagged a ticket. Some of them snagged their second one, but majority of those participants there do have their first ticket to the live final. So congratulations to the guys. Looking forward to seeing you guys on the live final. Hopefully one of those might snag the $100,000 first prize. Now, Hef, I don't see your name in those golden tickets as of yet. This is your final chance. Any tips there for you for the guys who are really struggling to get on the top of the leaderboard?
Got to be in it to win it. It's the only tip I can give.
Yep.
Pick out a little unicorn to bring you home. A little Mark Bagley.
How is Mark Bagley going?
I don't know, but he's forever in my mind as being a champion, Mark Bagley. Yeah, you got to just find someone. There's some feedback on your graphics work, Smatho. State of the line of length stuff, please.
Maybe Aussie Green next week. A little bottle green. Excellent. All right, we're digressing still, so let's get in some footy. So we are doing Friday night footy, which is between St Kilda and Carlton. There is a $75,000 Draftstars pool up for grabs on Friday night. Standard time, it's a 7:50 start on Friday night. Currently, the Saints are $1.55 favourites. They have drifted out a little bit today. The line is 11.5, and the total is 163.5. As you suggested, Hef, we're at the Dome. I think the roof will be closed. There's no crowd, so there's no issues with the weather. Now, there is some changes here, Hef. There's a few names in, a few names out. So for the Saints, they've brought back Highmore, Rowan Marshall, Hunter Clark, and Snag Higgins is back. These guys are out. Hunter, Calvario, Caulfield, Sharman. So I didn't watch this Saints game last week. I didn't realise these guys are playing. And then Sinclair has done a hamstring. And then for Carlton, we've got here Charlie Curnow. Some bloke named Charlie Curnow is playing. Harry Mackay, O'Brien, and Honey, Arid, Tracy Seaton, Cottrell, Zach Williams, and Eddie Betts is out, and Mark Murphy will probably be the sub again. So what are your thoughts on those particular team changes? As I said, I didn't really catch much of the St Kilda last week. So tell me what's happening with these two teams.
Well, you wouldn't have caught any of Sharman. He was the unused sub, so I'll let you off the hook there. Hunter Clark, I didn't expect we were going to see Hunter Clark back so soon. So interesting. It seems reasonably like for like. Caulfield and Sinclair are out. Highmore and Clark and fill in the back line there. Obviously, Marshall in to replace Hunter. It's a pretty big upgrade, despite you drafting Paul Hunter in the first round of your Dynasty League this year, Smatho. And Snags Higgins, who morphed into Wayne Carey for 2 weeks earlier in the year and then has been out with injury for a bit. So not a huge shake-up to the structure there. Carlton's a bit of a shake-up, though. Curnow and Mackay back in. I'm not seeing any real forwards out of the side, so it suggests they were pretty light on for forwards last week, Carlton. This young Josh Honey in to replace Eddie Betts, I think. And then Petreski, Seaton, and Williams. Obviously, Williams there with a hamstring. Interesting that they cut the cord there on Petreski, Seaton. Been pretty disappointing. O'Brien's a bit of an outside runner, so that sort of makes sense there. So, yeah, and Cottrell out as well. So they're going to have... Well, they brought in two big guys, so they're probably not as many runners as what they had last week. It might help a guy like Silvani, who's got a couple of big guys to feed off. Interesting.
All right, and as always, we use dailyfantasyrankings.com.au, the number one AFL daily fantasy resource for all of your Draftstars contests. And as always, I've dug into the data tools on the site, which are free to use. Here are my notes of this week that comes up.
This isn't in yellow? Oh, good.
No, Saints have restricted the opposition to the second lowest fantasy scores per team in the last 5. So they've been pretty stingy, the Saints, on their run to the finals. The Blues in the last 5 have given up an average of 3.8 100-plus scores, which is actually top of the league. So the Saints premium scorers have been getting on a few points there. The Blues are number 1 in the league for overall opposition forward scoring. So it's not something that we talked about too much about the forwards. And then Blues are third last for total stats accumulated in the league. So this kind of reminds me of a bit of like a Richmond-style kind of team where they don't accumulate much of the ball as much. So obviously fantasy scoring is down, and they've kind of let out in a couple of key areas, mainly the forwards and premium mids who tend to score those big tons. So any leans that you've seen through the data tools on DFR?
Interesting. A bit of a left fielder that Carlton give up a lot of tackles, and St Kilda are a very good tackling team. So there's something out of nowhere. Smatho, we have talked all year about the Saints being a surprisingly leaky side in terms of fantasy points, and we know last year that they were pretty stingy, and it does seem like they've got their form back the last month or so, and the fantasy points conceded has gone a similar way. They're sort of back to that stingy side that we expected last year. So yeah, it's hard to not say it's looking tough for the Blues after they just got pants by North Melbourne. But interesting to see what Curnow brings to this team, whether he brings them a bit of hope, because there's not much hope at the moment at Carlton.
Nope, I'm pretty flat on the Blues, and might be a bit of a theme of the stream here that would be pretty boyish on Saturday night. So let's bring up the Draftstars lobby here for the $75,000 contest for Saints versus Blues. And as always, we do start at the ruck position, and then here we go. We got three little options here for us straight off the bat here, Hef. Look, when I was doing my research, though, I didn't realise that Tom De Koning has actually played 9 games in a row. Just goes to show that either Pitnet's had a major injury or he's just the season's flying by. So he's available at 10,250, which also he has forward status. He's up against Rowan Marshall at 13,020, and then Paddy Ryder. I thought he was going to be arrested. There was talk today they might give him a rest, but no, he's there at 10,730. Now, as you can see there, Paddy Ryder is the only ruck single position there, where the other two do have forward status. So there is a bit of flexibility in this position. So are you leaning to just having one or possibly two in your sides, or do you want to go the full triple ruck stack and just don't worry about it, just play them all?
You've been gagging for a triple ruck stack this year, Smatho. Here's an opportunity for you. It's probably not going to come off, but De Koning, he gets up over 10,000 now. He's been a wonderful player the last 2 of the last 3 weeks, actually. Goldstein last week, he got an 84. That 66 was against Grundy, so it was quite a good effort, actually. And obviously, he had the 91 the week before against the Cats. So, well, St Kilda were hard last year to score against. This year, they've been a bit easy. You'd have to say that 80's right in the hitting zone for De Koning. Obviously, he's the lone ruck. He gets plenty of go there. He would seem to be top pick. I haven't missed doing St Kilda games because I never know what to do with Marshall and Ryder. Ryder does seem to take more of the centre bounces. Marshall, the thing going for Marshall is that stat you read us out about forwards against Carlton, because he'll probably be predominantly forward. You can see when he has a proper game, he's up there around the 120s, which is more than enough at 13K. So you could probably make a case for all of them, but I've got De Koning number 1. And I wouldn't play much triple ruck stack action, Smatho, but you could twist my arm into a double ruck stack if you were particularly keen on throwing one of the St Kilda guys in there, because, De Koning, he's not the bargain that he has been, but there's still a little bit meat left on the bones there, I think, at low 10,000s.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. I'll park it for now. I won't go too crazy, chuck them all in. If we have the cash a little bit later on, I might rejig it, but I'll put Tom in there for now. But if we can get up to Rowan Marshall or chuck him in the forward line, then I'll be happy with that. Let's move on to the backs. Now, it's not great reading here if you're on the Carlton side, because obviously there's no more Doherty. Nick Newman's come into the side and actually went really well to start with, back-to-back tons, and then he had a little bit of the dip, but then obviously he had an 8-tackle 90 last week, which obviously at 12,590 is around that value. But I don't see anyone really else apart from Jacob Wiedering and Adam Saad for the Blues that are kind of playable. If I scroll down, Liam Stocker's been really great, but his fantasy scores have been so-so. Liam Jones, Tom Wilson, and Plowman are your key defenders. So do you have any interest in playing a couple of these Blues in your side?
I do. You sort of look back through the teams that St Kilda have been playing. It was only a couple of weeks ago against Port Adelaide that they gave up a lot of points to those Port Adelaide backs. Burton had 100, McKenzie had 96, Bonner had 87, Aaliyah had 76. They're not premium names by any stretch, Smatho, and they've all scored really well. So even last week, Harry Edwards had 86 for West Coast. Liam Duggan had a 90. Hearn had a 90. Of those you ran through, Newman's, he just stands out as the obvious guy. So we know he can get 120 when the game sort of goes his way. So I wouldn't be scared to play Newman. I actually quite like Liam Stocker. His scores don't really project to be great value there at 8,500, but he's got a bit of youth on his side at least. If they do start to chip the ball around, he is actually a good user. So he's a guy that maybe can hit a PB here, which would be pretty good at 8.5. But like Williamson's a guy who's threatened a fair bit, but has never really. There you go. They're my two favourites. Probably. I'm not totally done on Sard, but he hasn't lived up to what we thought he might be this year. He's a pretty. See, they're at 10K. They're pretty safe scores without having a lot of upside, and Wiedering just seems a little bit too expensive for my liking.
Fair enough.
But on the flip side,
on the flip side, like I see the name Bradley Hill, and then I can scroll back to that 24, which was on the 29th of May, and that's the day I said I'm not playing Bradley Hill ever again, and then look what he's done. Look at those scores.
Yeah, you had to back the truck up there, Smatho.
He
is. They do seem to be looking to get him the ball a bit more. Hill, obviously, he's playing off that. He's playing in the back line a bit more, so he's not as easy to follow around and tag. 12,000 starting to get a bit. I don't know. 12,000 for Brad Hill starts to give me the jitters a bit. But the Saints back line, we tend to muck around with some pretty average names, don't we? Webster, Wilkie, sort of the usual suspects, all are about the same. They're even a little bit priced up to what we're used to. I'm sort of thinking them as $8,000 guys, and now they're pushing towards 10. Oh, this is the position that I don't really like on this slate that I'll be mixing and matching. Hunter Clark's the last one to talk about, Smatho.
Yes. Let's bring him up.
He's underpriced at 11. You see there he's got pretty big upside, but he did have his face rearranged. It's hard to play these guys first up from a spell, isn't it?
Yes, but it is Carlton. So that's it's not like we're going down to Geelong at the Cattery to try and chip around the back line there. This is Carlton at Marvel. The Saints love playing at Marvel. So yeah, if look at 11K, these are not great prices, and this is not a great position. Like we're a bit excited about Nick Newman. That's about it. Like
yeah, there's not much where we all. Hunter Clark. If Hunter Clark had been playing the last couple of weeks and they said here he is 11,000, he'd be nearly the highest owned back on the slate here.
Fair enough. I like Tom Highmore. Does he do the kick-ins? Does he take a couple of kick-ins from halfback or from fullback?
Time to time, you see he's got a couple of spikes there. So if you're looking to pair up a couple of Saints packs, he's the guy that's sort of still around his price, whereas he's been the other team, and Wilkie and Webster have been going okay. That just bumps their price up to an annoying level, I guess.
Annoying. All right, let's move on to the mids. And I think whatever price that Jack Steele was going to be put up, it's almost nearly an automatic play. Do you have any qualms playing with it? Not playing him at 18,000, or is that too much against pretty much a plum matchup where Carlton really starting to leak some big tons against them?
It's expensive, isn't it? But look at those scores. Like if you're happy with the value options, then you're basically just locking in. You're almost going to say you're locking in 130 from Jack Steele. The little stat I gave you about Carlton giving up tackles, and he's the man that's going to get all the tackles, Jack Steele. You look at those tackles there. I don't know what that stat means. Carlton are easy to run down, probably.
Bit slow around the stoppages. Yeah.
Like it's up to you if you want to pay 18,000 or not for Jack Steele. I don't think it's a must. I don't think it's bad. The interesting one for Saints, I think, is their midfield rotation, because we saw Dunstan burst on the scene about a month ago. You see there last week there were some worrying signs. The interesting part to me with the Saints was Zach Jones seemed to get in the rotation. He jumped up to 70% centre bounces last week there against the Eagles. And they actually put Seb Ross back in the centre bounces. So he was, the last month he was never above about 10%, but last week they threw him in 60% of the time. So the two losers were Dunstan, who basically halved his centre bounce attendance down to the 40s, and Brad Crouch, who was similar. He only attended 40%. If you pull up Brad Crouch, you'll see he also had a massive down game. So whether Ratton has I've decided Dunstan and Crouch, for as good as they are ball winners, the knock on them has always been disposal. Whether Ratton said, okay, let's get Ross and Jones in there and see if that works any better for us. So that's really muddied the waters for me on which midfielders you want to go with. You've got to make a decision. Is Ratton going to throw that theory out and go back to Dunstan, back to Crouch? Or is he going to stay with Jones and more Ross? It's something I don't have an answer to, Smatho, but getting that right is going to go a long way to where you finish on this slate, I think.
Fair enough. Any cheapest Saints players here as I scroll down? Ryan Burns gets another go here at 9,460, coming off a 67 against the Eagles there. So he's floating around the wing, half forward. Is that right?
Yeah, he's hard to 9.5, considering he's got one score over 75 for the season, and which is, well, that's about where you'd want him to be hitting, at least that sort of 70 mark at that price. I'm struggling to see the upside with him, especially with all the midfield options there for the Saints. A couple of those scores is when they had a few injuries. Obviously, Jones had been out for a while, Dunstan out of the team, that sort of stuff. So I found it hard to find any decent cheap options here for the Saints.
Fair enough. Let's look at Carlton options. So obviously, my boy Sam Walsh is at 16,470. Obviously, he was well held against North Melbourne last week, and in a very disappointing overall team effort from the Blues. So we could back the truck on him. I don't think we'd be able to play him with Steele because of the lack of value that we're kind of seeing so far on this particular slate. And then we drop all the way down to Ed Kerner at 12.2, and then Patrick Cripps is now down at 11,770. And then Matthew Kennedy, he's burst on the scene the last month or so, but he was well held last week as well. He's at 11,060. And then we fall away to Lockie O'Brien, who's been reintroduced in the team. He had a little go earlier this year for a 50. Jack Nunes has always been parading that wing/halfback. He's at 9,010. I reckon he'll make a few sides here. And then I'll see Paddy Dow's there at 7,260 after. Look, that's his top score of the year last year. Yes, last week, 77. So we can talk about Walsh all we want. I think he'd be popular. I reckon he's a great candidate for backing the truck up. But what else are you looking at here in the Carlton midfield here?
Yeah, I think there's some reasonable options here for Carlton. Like Paddy Dow, will start with him because they continue to give him opportunity in the middle. Fourth straight week of attending over half the centre bounces. 7,200 with his level of opportunity is hard to turn down. Even his worst games there, he's coming in around 6.5 times his salary, so he hasn't actually buried anyone. I'm not super rapt to get involved with Dow, but he's a reasonable play for sure. Lockie O'Brien's one that interests me. I think it's amazing that Paddy Dow is cheaper than Lockie O'Brien. So I think the ownership's going to be massively in favour of Dow. O'Brien's a guy that won't get centre bounces. He seems to just run up and down the wing. I think if you want to pivot from Dow, I think O'Brien would be worth rolling the dice on, knowing that this is a bit of a high-risk play. But he's a very high draft pick. It's taking him a while. It's almost like Paddy Dow. It's taken him a while to get a hang of things, and he probably still hasn't. But for the first time, some sentiment from the Carlton supporters has been that let's get Lockie O'Brien in the team, whereas they haven't been overly impressed with him at VFL level either. So he's my sort of pivot off Dow. I think Nunes is probably a great price. He's just got the ceiling, Nunes, 9,000. Any guy that can go 10x their salary has got to be a guy you've got to have some exposure to. With Petreski, Seaton, Williams out of the side, that says to me there's going to be more ball for Nunes on the outside, so I'm happy with him as well. Kennedy I'm a bit concerned with because he got the boot a bit from that rotation last week, the centre bounces. Him and Kerno have been the two that have been bouncing around, with Dow getting plugged in there. Cripps been out of the side 2 weeks ago. He came back in last week, and they were the two guys that sort of sacrificed the centre bounces. So I find it hard to play Kennedy at 11,000. I find it hard to play Kerno. So if I'm playing the Carlton guys, I'm sort of chipping around with a couple of those cheaper guys. Nunes would be my favourite. Cripps 11,000's pretty damn good for the old Patrick Cripps, but even the way he's going, it's a reasonable price for him. Kennedy and Curnow are the two guys I'm wary of.
Yep. I'm still pretty keen on Saints mids. I like your explanation about Seb Ross and Zach Jones. I think I have the salary to get these two in, so they're going in there for now. That leaves me a bit over 10K per player left. So let's move on the forwards. So obviously I talked about the data suggesting that we should target Saints forwards because the Blues are giving up the number one overall fantasy points in that particular position. So if we look at here, obviously Rowan Marshall, Jack Billings is your midfield / forward types. Tim Membra here is the one that you could go absolutely bananas if the Saints get on a roll at 11,150. I do like him, especially with those two previous scores there. Didn't really get going against the Eagles last week. Snag Higgins can bob up. He's got that ceiling there as well at 10,140. And then Max King, he finally got some goals last week. So there's 6 goals there last week for 104. So they're your main key kind of forward guys up there. Is there any of those take your fancy from the St Kilda Football Club?
Talk at Max King because I think he's going to be quite popular at 8,000. I've got some negatives against King. First of all, you know my thoughts on the big tall forward bobbing up against the Eagles. I think 104's obviously a great return. Is it as impressive as what it probably first sounds? I'm not so sure. 84 coming against Brisbane Lions. We've talked about people kicking goals on Harris Andrews before. So they're his big spikes. He comes up against Wiedering here, who's pretty much one of the top backs in the comp. So just considering that he's going to be popular off those two big scores, I'm more inclined to look away from King just on a sort of a game theory perspective. The guy above him, Dean Kent, he's much more unfashionable. He's not the big strapping full forward. He's a nuggety little outside guy. But those 3 scores he's got there, at any of those would be, well, especially the last 2 are more than good enough at 8,500. And he does have a little bit higher in him to go. And like you say, the matchup's great here against Carlton. So Kent's a guy that I'm really happy to play at a bit cheaper. Membry's a guy I think you've got to have some exposure to just because the setup, like the matchup, the price is high enough that he's not going to be too popular. He can hit 100 if he gets going. His kickbags against Carlton. I definitely want to have some Membry in my team. And then Snags Higgins, I'm a little bit wary on playing first up. And then, of course, if you want to throw in one of those ruckmen. But I'm pretty happy with Kent in a lot of my lineups, to be honest.
Excellent.
Butler's another guy. Butler can pop up at 8,000 as well. We saw he back to a little bit of form last week with a 90. If you are on this, St Kilda should win the following in the forward data, then yeah, I think Butler and Kent are your cheaper options. And even Ben Long, if you're going to go with some Saints backs, you can play him as a forward. He has been playing a little bit in the back line as well. Long named at centre half back. Good old team selections there for the AFL, but he's a guy that is cheap and you can link him up with a couple of backs if that's the approach you're looking to take with your lineup.
All right, let's quickly talk about Carlton options. If you're going contrarian and you think that the Blues are going to make a mess of the Saints here, let's start with right down the bottom here with Josh Honey. He's here at 5,000. He's actually a forward / midfield available player. Do you have any sources or any intel on Mr. Honey?
No, it's kind of your 50, 60 point guy in the VFL by the looks of things. Smatho, he's come in to replace Eddie Betts. Reminds me a little bit of Ginnivan last week. He's going to play a similar type of role, expecting a similar type of output. We know the 5K guys don't need to do much, but if he's going to come in and get you 30 odd, then you can probably get a better return elsewhere. I lean against having much Honey in my team, to be honest.
Let's have a look here. So there's plenty of Carlton options. So obviously we've got the Twin Towers of Harry Mackay here. It's 8,990. they're not bad scores if you can get on a few. Charlie Curnow is just behind him at 8,810. I probably prefer a watch on Charlie himself. Zach Fisher is here at 8,220. He just seems to be consistently getting those 50s and 60s. Matthew always tends to bob up a little bit, but he's not that fancy relevant with back-to-back 40s. Also scrolling through, Jack Silvani, as you mentioned, there could be a bit of a opportunity here for himself at 9,550 and coming off that ton last week. Hef, thoughts on old Jack?
I hate following up the tons on these guys because everyone can see, we got 100 last week. He's 9,000. I'll throw him in. He's getting a little bit of time backing up to Koning, gets him around the ground a bit more. He probably benefits a little bit more with the attention going to Mackay and Curnow. The 9,500 price tag slows me up a little bit. Curnow's the guy I'm interested in because on his day, he's obviously an absolute gun. I think a lot of people are going to be like, oh, geez, I don't want to play Curnow first up. Let's have a look at him. Because that's the initial reaction I think most sane people would have. Maybe you get a go here at Charlie Curnow at really low ownership. I probably want to sprinkle some of him in my teams just for that basis there, Smatho. But a lot of these Carlton guys, there's not a big spike. There's not a big spike on Fisher. There's no big spike on Owies. I won't see myself playing too many Carlton forwards, I don't think.
No. So what I'm going to do here, I think I can get Marshall in now. So if I play Ben Long at 7,020, I can scroll up here. Yep, that easily gets Rowan Marshall there. There's $800 there if I wanted to spend some more salary. But sometimes if you want to leave 870 on the table, then you're going to get yourself unique, which is pretty good there. So there is our little combined team there for us, Hef, for Friday. Now, I've got a comment here from Caden Hume. Says, mate, you doing the Saturday slate tonight, lads? Now, we don't usually do any prep for Saturday slates, but maybe we can look at next week. All right, Caden. So let's get us in the lab next week. We might be able to do some Saturday work, especially if there's going to be a big 5-game slate, hopefully that the AFL will do. So
I actually did scroll through Saturday's slate just in case.
Oh, have you?
I've got nothing.
Let me bring. I was going to say, let me bring it up.
I thought just in case I'll be able to throw one at you, and nothing stood out to me on my first little scroll through. So sorry, maybe next week.
Maybe next week. Fair enough.
Sometimes you scroll through and someone jumps out at you, Smith. I was really hoping that would happen. No, didn't happen.
Now, if you want to do your early prep, make sure you get the dailyfantasyrankings.com.au. We'll have all the data tools for each slate, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Make sure you get involved for Draftstars. The golden tickets will all be done by Sunday. So if you want a chance to win that $100,000 first prize, this is your last opportunity. So make sure you get on the draftstars.com.au. All right, Hef, I'll let you go. We'll go back to the old Channel 7, on the old 7 Plus app, and see where we can find out for a bit of late night viewing. Thanks so much for joining me today, mate.
Thank you. Thanks to all the viewers. Good luck.
Thanks to all the viewers. Thanks for the comments today. Yeah, give those last tickets. I'll give you a little shout out next week, and we'll catch you all next week for the next edition of the DFS Down Under Show. Catch us later.